Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this today because we are looking at one of the absolute ultimate frustrations of learning a new language. I want you to picture this. You've studied English for years. You have memorized tons of vocabulary, you've completely mastered the grammar, and honestly, you finally feel pretty confident. But then, you sit down to watch your favorite television show or a brand new movie in its original English format, without any subtitles, and suddenly, it just sounds like absolute gibberish. You're trying your hardest to catch even a single word, but your brain is completely, utterly overwhelmed.
So, why does your favorite show sound like absolute gibberish? Well, if that scenario sounds painfully familiar to you, I want to immediately validate your struggle here. It is an incredibly common problem, and honestly, here's the most important thing you need to know right off the bat. Your lack of comprehension is not entirely your fault. When that dialogue hits your ears and sounds like complete nonsense, your brain is essentially panicking, just going, huh? We haven't learned this yet. But there are very specific mechanical reasons why this happens. And much more importantly, there are concrete ways we can fix it.
All right, let's get right into part one, sensory overload and mumbling. Think about what actually happens when you sit down to watch modern television. Your brain and your ears are immediately competing against a massive cognitive load. You've got this mental checklist going. You're actively trying to follow the plot, you're analyzing the characters' facial expressions, you're processing the visual editing, taking in the dramatic background music, and trying to follow the physical action on screen. By the time your brain actually gets around to decoding the speech, that task has been pushed to the very, very bottom of your cognitive priority list. Your brain is simply on sensory overload.
And then, there is the whole issue of modern filmmaking. Today's movies and shows are completely obsessed with realism, and because of this, actors often just don't speak clearly. They whisper, they mumble, they talk over each other, and they shout. Because, let's be honest for a second, that really is how people talk in real life. Now, combine that with modern microphones that are so highly advanced they capture literally every single background noise on set, and understanding the spoken dialogue becomes an absolute chore. So remember, sometimes it's really not about your English level at all. It's just the realistic way modern movies are made.
That brings us to part two, fast connected speech.
To really understand this need for speed on TV, we have to look at a linguistic phenomenon called connected speech. Native speakers talk fast, and this speed creates the effect of one big blur of words. Basically, it's the natural blurring and joining of words in spoken English. It is incredibly important to realize that this is an ingrained, structural habit of the English language. It is completely normal. They aren't just being sloppy or lazy. Connected speech is how the language naturally flows in real life, even though to a learner, it can feel like they are just swallowing half the words.
Just compare classroom English to real TV English. In your class, a teacher will slowly and clearly ask, "What do you want?" But in real life, fast, blended, and full of shortcuts, it becomes, "What do you want?" Or take the perfectly articulated, "Did you eat?" In reality, it aggressively blends together and turns into, "Did you eat?" Even a simple phrase like, "I don't want to go," turns into a completely mashed up, "I don't want to go." Looking at these exact phonetic examples really highlights how words aggressively blend together, making it an entirely different listening experience than what you study in a textbook.
And sometimes the speed is simply out of control. Take this quote from Benedict Cumberbatch playing Sherlock. Listen to how incredibly fast I have to say this just to match his pacing. Pretty racy for first thing on a Monday morning, wouldn't you agree? I've written a little blog in the identification of perfumes. He delivers this with just insane speed. The reality is, I am absolutely sure even native speakers watch that specific show with subtitles on. So please do not feel bad about yourself if you can't catch every single word of a fast-paced drama right away.
Let's move on to part three, slang, culture, and accents. Knowing the language itself is not always enough to understand a show. There's this great scene in the sitcom Friends where the characters Joey and Chandler are looking very intensely for a lost string. A woman looks at them and mockingly asks, "Who are you, the Hardy Boys?" Now, if you didn't grow up with American culture, you would completely miss the joke here. The Hardy Boys are fictional teen detectives from a classic book series. So calling them the Hardy Boys means they're acting like amateur detectives and taking their search way too seriously. TV shows are just packed with these casual cultural expressions and slang.
Then we have the cherry on top, accents. English has so many of them. While standard American accents might feel relatively clear to some, British, Irish, Scottish, or Australian accents can present a massive challenge. Our source strongly advises against giving yourself what they call accent whiplash. Don't scrabble your brain by watching a show with a thick British accent like Peaky Blinders one day and then switching to a heavy Southern American accent in True Detective the next.
Your brain just won't be able to keep up. Pick one accent that you actually find relatively clear and stick to content with that specific accent for a while.
So, how do we fix all this? Let's get into part 4, the smart way to watch.
Now that we know what the hurdles are, we need a solution. And the absolutely crucial first step here is avoiding what we can call the subtitle trap. You should not use subtitles in your native language. I know it's tempting, but when you do that, you are just taking the easy way out. Your brain completely switches off from English, and watching the show just becomes an exercise in reading your own language. It bypasses English learning entirely. Instead, you must turn on English subtitles. This allows you to pause when needed, read the English words, recognize familiar vocabulary, pick up new ones, and actually genuinely improve your listening skills.
You also have to make sure you match your content to your current level. If you're a beginner or even an intermediate learner, please do not start with a highly complex fantasy drama like Game of Thrones. You'll be hitting the pause button 10 times a minute. It won't feel like watching a fun show, it will literally feel like survival mode. Instead, choose something simpler. Cartoons are fantastic for this. Think about shows like SpongeBob SquarePants, Peppa Pig, or The Simpsons. The language is highly approachable, putting you in a comfortable learning mode rather than an exhausting state of panic.
Finally, let's talk about part 5, training your ear. To conquer these barriers right from your couch, you can try an active listening exercise called the shadowing technique. It's super simple, and here is exactly how you do it. First, you turn on those English subtitles. Then, as the characters speak, you read and listen very closely. But you don't stop there. You actively try to copy their exact intonation, their rhythm, and how they link their words together. You are literally listening and repeating, shadowing their speech. This physically trains your ear and your mouth simultaneously, which really helps you internalize the natural flow of the language.
You can also use what's called the rewatch strategy. Look, learning shouldn't be a chore. It should actually be fun. So pick a niche you really love, whether that's comedy, history, or drama. Watch a scene multiple times without subtitles just to test yourself. Then rewatch it with the subtitles on to see exactly what you missed. Most importantly, replay your absolute comforting favorites over and over again. If you love Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, or Sex and the City, rewatch them constantly. Because you already know the plot. As your level grows, every single time you rewatch, you're going to notice new words and new cultural moments you completely missed before.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this question to think about. Which of your absolute favorite movies will you rewatch to train your ear tonight? Remember, mastering this whole thing takes time. It might take months or even years, so don't stop. Just keep going step by step. But I promise you, one day you will be watching a show in its original format and suddenly realize you understand almost everything. And then we tell you the payoff of true comprehension is an absolutely amazing feeling. Enjoy the process!